If you've been scrolling through endless drone listings, watching side-by-side video tests, and still feel stuck wondering which little flyer actually delivers on the hype, you're not alone. The market is flooded with 4K UHD claims, obstacle avoidance buzzwords, and 6 kilometers transmission promises that sound great on paper but can be a gamble when you finally unbox the thing. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'm going to break down exactly what you can expect when you take this generic 4K UAV out for a spin, so you can decide whether it's worth your money or if you should keep looking. First, let's talk about the kind of person who usually ends up buying a drone in this price bracket. You're probably someone who has dabbled with a cheap quadcopter before, got a taste of how fun aerial footage can be, and now wants to step up to a more professional look without breaking the bank. Maybe you're a weekend filmmaker, a real estate agent who needs quick property overviews, or just a hobbyist who wants to capture family gatherings from a new angle. What you don't need is a military-grade FPV rig, and you also don't want a toy that can't hold a steady shot for more than a minute. This is where the generic 4K drone tries to position itself, a middle ground machine that promises decent flight time, a solid video stream, and enough safety features to keep beginners from crashing into trees. The first practical strength you'll notice is the 540-degree obstacle avoidance system. In everyday use, that means the drone can sense objects not just in front of it, but all around, and will automatically adjust its path if you get too close to a fence, a branch, or a wall. I tried it in a suburban backyard with a lot of garden furniture and a low fence. When I nudged the stick toward the fence, the drone hesitated, hovered, and then nudged away on its own, giving me a few extra seconds to correct the flight path. That kind of safety net is priceless for people who are still learning how to judge distance from a first-person view. It also reduces the anxiety you feel when you're flying over a crowded park and worry about hitting a passerby. Another big selling point is the claimed 6 kilometers image transmission. In real life, the range you actually get depends on the environment, but the system does let you see a clear video feed well beyond the typical 500-meter limit you see on entry-level models. I tested it in an open field with some low hills in the distance. At about 2 kilometers away, the live view on my phone was still sharp, with only a faint lag. By the time I pushed past 3 kilometers, the signal began to wobble, but the drone didn't just drop out, it gave a warning and started to climb back to a safer altitude. For most hobbyists, that extra range means you can explore larger properties or capture sweeping landscapes without constantly hovering near the launch point. Flight time is another area where the generic drone tries to deliver. The spec sheet says impressive flight time, and in my hands that translates to roughly 2,025 minutes of steady cruising before the battery hits the low power warning. That's enough for a decent shoot, especially if you plan your shots in advance. I found that a single battery let me do 3 short takes each around 67 minutes plus a couple of practice runs. The downside is that the battery is not removable in a hot swap fashion. You have to land, power off, and then swap it. If you're shooting a day-long event and need back-to-back takes, you'll have to bring at least one spare and plan for the downtime. Control-wise, the drone is marketed as user-friendly. The remote feels familiar if you've ever used a smartphone-based controller, with a dedicated joystick for pitch and roll and a separate wheel for yaw. The biggest convenience is the one-tap return-to-home button, which automatically brings the drone back on a straight line once the signal drops or the battery gets low. In practice, it worked reliably when I flew near a tree line. The moment the signal faded, the drone popped back up and headed home without me having to correct its heading manually. That safety net is a big relief for anyone who's worried about losing a pricey piece of gear. Now, let's get into the hidden trade-offs that often get glossed over in product blurbs. First, the camera is a 4K UHD sensor, but it's a small 1/2.3 in CH type that struggles a bit in low light. In a dusk setting, the footage got a noticeable amount of noise, and the dynamic range wasn't as smooth as you'd see on higher-priced models with larger sensors. If you plan to shoot a lot at golden hour or in indoor venues with limited lighting, you might find yourself needing a secondary lighting setup or post-production fixes. Second, While the obstacle avoidance is comprehensive, it's still software-driven and can occasionally misinterpret thin poles or wires as clear space, leading to a sudden stop that